Hello, this is Liz Bitgood. Welcome to Manager Memo, a bi-weekly podcast that beams from the beautiful hills of Dudley, Massachusetts. Manager Memo is a business forum where the fundamentals of planning, organizing, leading, and evaluating are discussed and debated. Your host for our show is Len Samborowski, Management Chair at Nichols College. And now, on with the show.
Major General Gary W. Keefe is the 43rd Adjutant General of the Massachusetts National Guard. In this capacity, he oversees the strategic direction, administration, and operation of 9,000 joint soldiers, airmen, and civilians of the Massachusetts National Guard, with an annual budget of $450 million. General Keefe received his commission in 1986 through the Reserve Officer Training Corps program at Norwich University. Once commissioned, he served as the ground-launched cruise missile launch officer with the 71st Tactical Mission Squadron, Belgium. He completed his active duty training in 1992 as the Peacekeeper Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Combat Crew Flight Commander with the 90th Strategic Missile Wing, Francis E. Warren Air Force Base, Wyoming. In 1992, he joined the Massachusetts Air National Guard with the 104th Fighter Wing as an active guard and reservist. He has held the positions of Logistics Plans and Program Chief, Supply Management Officer, Aircraft Maintenance Officer, Logistics Group Commander, Maintenance Group Commander, and Mission Support Group Commander. In 1999, during Operations Allied Force, General Keefe served as the Expeditionary Logistics Group Commander for the presidentially activated 104th Expeditionary Operations Group, Trapani, Italy. He commanded 400 United States Air Force Europe personnel comprised from the Air National Guard's 104th Fighter Wing, the 110th Fighter Wing, and the 124th Fighter Wing, as well as personnel from the United States Air Force and Air Force Reserve. In 2003, during Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom, General Keefe served as the 387th Expeditionary Logistics Group Commander at a classified location in Southwest Asia. He commanded in excess of 800 United States Central Command personnel and was responsible for all aircraft maintenance and logistic activities associated with the OA-10 aircraft and Predator remotely piloted aircraft missions throughout the Air Command. Prior to his selection as the Adjutant General, General Keefe served as the Director of Manpower, Personnel and Human Resources J1 for the Massachusetts National Guard, the Massachusetts Air National Guard Director of Staff, the Vice Chief of the Massachusetts National Guard Joint Staff, Assistant Adjutant General Air, and Commander of the Massachusetts National Guard. In addition to his Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Norwich University, General Keefe has a Master of Science in Management from Lesley University, Cambridge, Massachusetts. He is a graduate of the United States Air War College, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, and a graduate of the National Defense University, Fort Leslie McNair, Washington, District of Columbia. In 2011, he attended the Kennedy School of Government General and Flag Officer Homeland Security Executive Seminar at Harvard University. General Keefe has received over 40 awards and decorations from the United States military, to include the Army Commendation Medal, the Air Force Commendation Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Bronze Star Medal with 1 bronze oak leaf cluster, and the Legion of Merit with 1 bronze oak leaf cluster. Of note, the interview with Major General Keefe was conducted on 3rd of May, 2017. This was prior to the Boston Celtics meeting the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James in the NBA playoffs. The results of that series did not go as either I or General Keefe had wished. It's our extreme pleasure to welcome General Keefe to the podcast. General, thank you so much for coming in today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Leonard. It's a great chance to come back and see Nichols College, a beautiful campus and a great college and institution. It's produced our own Colonel Tom Devine, actually.
Absolutely.
So it's
we
great
know
to be
Tom,
here.
and he's well received on campus for sure. So many of our listeners don't know much about the military, so I would ask if you could tell us a little bit about the Massachusetts National Guard.
Sure. Started in 1636, the birth of the Massachusetts National Guard, and really by presidential executive order, it has been identified as Salem, Mass. Is the birthplace of the National Guard for the United States of America. But we started in 1636 with the original regiments. Through the years, through the growth of the use of the military through the United States, protecting our country and our allies, we have grown to our modern day force. Currently in Massachusetts, we've got 2 air wings and 9 different Army units. We have total, we've got 6,000 soldiers and 2,000 airmen for a combined force of about 8,000 military personnel here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we've got about another 1,000 pure civilian employees.
So 9,000 people that you're responsible for, and around a $450 million budget, from what I understand.
That's correct, Len. Yes, like I said, that budget encompasses everything: F-15 aircraft, the new missions we're looking at, both on the Army and the air side, cyber security. We've got a cyber Army battalion. We're going to be standing up at Camp Curtis Guild up in Reading, Mass. And we've got a cyber intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance group that we are standing up down on Cape Cod at the 102nd Intelligence Wing. So we've got a lot of different areas that we're covering.
So, General, how can you possibly keep track of it all?
You know, like any good leader or manager, you surround yourself with talented people. I've got a great team around me of both officers and non-commissioned officers or enlisted soldiers and airmen. And quite frankly, Lenny, it's really easy for me. I believe in just empowering them. I encourage them to take risks, have fun, and you know what? You never know what you're going to get, what's going to come out of it. You know, we've gotten away from, for many years back, when you were in the service and when I was coming through the ranks, it was definitely a one mistake, Air Force or Army.
That's right.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah.
You know, everyone from the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Chief of the National Guard, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Director of the Army Guard, Director of the Air Guard, they really are encouraging risk and looking for innovation. What is going to grow the military? What's going to find those niche areas that's going to allow every branch of the service, active and reserve components, to include the Guard, to be relevant in the years ahead and really meet whatever challenges face our nation when we need a military force to answer that challenge.
So you view the Guard stronger than ever?
I do. I definitely do. We've changed all over the place. If you go back in time and you look at the wars our nation has fought, quite frankly, we've never won a war without pulling in the Guard or the militia themselves. Today, we actually are responsible for both Homeland security and fighting our nation's wars overseas. Right now, I've got an infantry battalion over in the Sinai. I've got airmen doing expeditionary combat support missions all throughout Southwest Asia. I've got an aviation battalion that is over in Syria and Libya doing Medivac missions.
Syria?
Yes, sir. So we are all over the globe, but more importantly, when something bad happens here in the Commonwealth or anywhere in New England, really, we're the first ones that get called, and we're the first ones to answer. I'll point to the Boston Marathon. I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but the photos they show of that horrendous day were 2 of our soldiers pulling the barricade back to get to the victims. And,
Absolutely.
So we're
And all
there.
the way back to 9/11, your jets were the first responders.
They were. That back when the F-15s were down on Cape Cod out of the
Right.
102nd Fighter Wing at the time, they were the first ones to respond. And then as that war on terrorism escalated, the A-10s out of Westfield, Massachusetts, deployed 3 times in support of the global war on terror. So yeah, we're all over the place.
So in Massachusetts and across the globe, your forces are out.
They are.
Your people are out. And like you said, you have good people in all those locations to keep the leadership and the mission functioning.
Yeah, and I think what really allows us to groom and bring up the cream of the crop, if you will, is we are always required, as you know, to do professional education. We are always sending our folks off to schools to become better officers, better enlisted leaders, better soldiers, better airmen. And our education never stops. Like I said, I know you did Army War College. You know, I did Air War College. We had to do Squadron Officer School.
I saw it too, that you were at Harvard 3 times.
I was. Actually, that was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, they keep extending us other opportunities to attend some of these other schools. I think what's great about it is back in the day where it was purely our education consisted of whatever branch of service you were in.
Right.
Now we've gone joint. There's a lot of exchange between the services, but even more so, I've noticed in my 28, 30 years of service, that black and white area between civilian education and military education is now very gray. So a lot of the civilian academic institutions are bringing military officers and senior non-commissioned officers and enlisted folks in to learn more about each other and understand how we can each help each other, not just defend our great nation, but at the same time capitalize on some of the innovation that both of us in both sectors are actually exploring.
Right. I was always impressed with the education that the military provided. I mean, that was one of the highlights for me of the opportunities that were available. And so it's good to, I think, highlight that to people that don't know about it. This constant education process, regardless of your specialty, your military specialty.
Definitely so. We've been lucky enough, too, in the Massachusetts National Guard. We've partnered with Harvard University, and we run 2 courses a year that are paid for by the National Guard Bureau out of Washington, D.C. We run what's called the General Officer, Flag Officer, Homeland Security course, which is for generals and Navy admirals, Coast Guard admirals. And then we also take senior executive staff members. We'll take different leaders from different federal agencies. Special agent in charge for Boston, for example, has been to this course. And what we do is we sit there, and it's taught by folks out of the Kennedy School of Harvard University, and we focus on different Homeland Security initiatives, different case studies. Some of the case studies.
We use case studies. We do that big here.
And the whole course is really case studies.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's no really textbook or cookie cutter template on how to properly manage and lead.
Just like in life.
Exactly. And what we've been using, we've used Ferguson as an example in this course, the Boston Marathon, any type of event that has come up, to even include California wildfires, which are an event every year. We break these case studies down, we talk about things, we develop into different teams, and just kind of see, what comes out. It's kind of fun because every time I sit in on the course lately, you get a different answer, different solution, and quite frankly, it gets everybody thinking. But the biggest thing that they push is, what are you doing as a military service member to close that gap between the civilians that are in your surrounding community to make sure that when that bad day happens,
right,
military or civilian, everyone's coming together to do what needs to be done to save lives and protect property.
Absolutely. How would you identify yourself as a leader? Is it a collaborative process? Are you an authoritarian? How do you make things happen?
I am definitely a big fan of collaboration. I joke all the time. Rarely ever am I the smartest man in the room, even when I'm alone and I'm talking someplace. So I actually have
that's all that Harvard time.
Yeah.
It didn't help. Okay. You're being modest, General. You're being modest.
But I am a big fan of collaboration, communication. I am constantly talking to my folks. And as you know, when you come into the military, your first rule is, number 1, take care of your troops.
Absolutely.
And then number 2, build your bench and build depth in that bench. And that's what I really believe in, is getting my team together, listening to their ideas, coming to a decision, and then moving forward. But at the same time, I will sit there and make sure that, hey, we are basically developing who's the next Lenny Samborowski when Lenny Samborowski leaves.
Right.
And who's 2 behind that guy.
Sure.
Because one thing I hate, and I know you hate, and we've talked about this in past years, single point of failure cannot exist in any organization.
Right.
So when I'm gone, when I'm out of the state, visiting, doing some type of military service or duty someplace, I make it real clear that my leaders are empowered to make any decision that I would make, even if I was in the office, and we just kind of keep moving forward.
Can we talk a little bit about the enlisted and the non-commissioned officer? Because I think a lot of people that think they understand the military don't understand how significant our military is different than those militaries of other nations,
right,
in that we have a professional well-educated, non-commissioned officer corps, and your relationship with your command sergeant major.
Right, and you're right. We have a all-volunteer professional force. Very different from other countries that have what's called conscript service, where folks are basically told you've got to do as being a citizen of whatever nation, you will do 2, sometimes 5 years of military service. We're all volunteer, and part of that volunteer force is we are constantly from day one, from basic training, we are both operationally training our soldiers, airmen, Marines, coasties, sailors, and we're also professionally training those young troops. In the enlisted force, they focus a little bit more on whatever the technical experience or knowledge they will need to do what's called their military operational specialty. In the Air Force, we call it the Air Force Specialty Code. They focus a little bit more on that than the officer corps does as we get a little bit higher up. As an enlisted soldier, an airman makes their way through the ranks, they slowly begin to be trained and developed as supervisors. And eventually, once you get to the command sergeant major or the command chief master sergeant, although they're still enlisted soldiers and airmen, they're in essence managers, senior managers.
Senior managers.
Exactly, who are part of what I call my kitchen cabinet, or part of the executive board when we sit there and we make these decisions. For the command sergeant major, he runs the enlisted force. He is the daddy rabbit. He's the big toe, and he's the one that I talk to when we find out what do we need to change to make sure that we are keeping our people ready, reliable, and relevant. And above all, the Massachusetts National Guard and any volunteer force, keeping them interested to coming back and answering the call when we call them in for duty. And he's done. My command sergeant major is a guy by the name of Carlos Ramos Rivera, probably the most professional soldier I've ever met in my life.
The sergeant majors I've known in the past are always going to tell you the truth,
Yes.
even when it's ugly. And I imagine your sergeant major is like that.
He does, and actually, you know something, my command sergeant major does, my command chief master sergeant on the air side is a guy named Rick McDonald, does the same thing. And then I get it from the G staff colonels,
Okay.
I get it from the A staff colonels, and I get it from the other one-star generals.
So
No one's afraid to come in
You
and
have
say,
no absence
not
of,
at all.
of truth
Not at all.
talkers.
But I get a little shocked at how many ugly babies are out there in the National Guard, but we pretty them up pretty quick once we start putting our heads to it.
General, you've had a great career, as you said, almost 30 years, and as you grew in the military and as you rose in the ranks, have there been any surprises? How would you contrast, your first years with what you see now?
Yeah, so I got commissioned after I graduated from Norwich University in 1986. I went on active duty. In my first assignment, I was a brand new second lieutenant stationed in Belgium during the Cold War. And
That was a tough assignment.
yeah, very hard. I was a ground launch cruise missile launch officer. Did a year and a half there, and then when they signed the INF treaty, got rid of that system. I went off to the 400 Strategic Missile Squadron, which had it's no longer here, but it was the Peacekeeper or the MX missile, big intercontinental ballistic nuclear missile. I did that for a while. And then I ended up coming into the Guard. And, for many years I knew of the Guard. My father was in the Guard since 1956. I didn't really know about the Guard. I didn't know about the militia roots. I really didn't know a lot about it. I just knew my father put an Air Force uniform on and went to this place called Barnes Air Guard Base and worked. What I've seen change is, quite honestly, who our perceived enemies are now. Mm-hmm. I mean, back during the 80s, it was the
Russia.
Soviet Union,
Yeah.
right? And the United States and the Fulda Gap
Fulda Gap.
strategy,
That's
right?
right.
Now it is, we're targets all over the place. We're not safe in our homeland anymore. And,
Right.
My,
Where's it going to come from? Where's the
exactly.
threat? Right.
It's funny, my oldest daughter had to interview somebody who was grew up in the 80s, and she asked me a similar question a couple weeks ago. And I said to her, the biggest change, we didn't have terrorism in the 80s. We had heard about it, the IRA, over in Ireland, if you have come from Irish descent, but we didn't have what was going on in Egypt and in the Middle East. Now we do.
Yes.
And so you're right. You don't know where's the threat going to come from, who are they going to target, and what are we going to be able to do to counter that threat?
Does that keep you awake at night?
It does. I worry about not just my troops who are deployed. I worry about us here in the Commonwealth. Boston, I think, is now, I think it just passed Chicago as number 2 in the country for financial importance behind New York City. So, you know, anybody who's been in Massachusetts, you go to Boston. It's a very, very old city. Tight
Small
quarters,
streets.
exactly.
Right.
A lot of old buildings, a lot of old infrastructure. I get very nervous as if something was to happen in Boston, how I could position my troops to respond when Governor Baker needs us to roll in and take care of, or at least address a problem. So I do think about that an awful lot. I think about how my troops are arranged, where my armories, where my installations are set up, and if that's going to meet this modern day enemy.
So do you have a strategic plan attached to that?
We do. So on the Air Guard and the Army Guard, we both have really good strategic plans, both operationally and for facilities. We call our Army plan for our facilities is called Plan 2050, where we have actually positioned and selected areas throughout the Commonwealth where we will be building new readiness centers when funding becomes available. It's interesting because we're pulling away from the Boston area, and we are actually looking to disperse more along like the Route 2 corridor or areas like we're in right now, this
Yes.
Dudley, Charlton area, which would allow us to pull troops in, position, and then send them
out
in an area of responsibility. So, and on the air side, the Air Guard has been really good about strategic planning for a lot of years. The Air National Guard has what's called a strategic planning system nationwide. Once a year, they'll update it. They'll get rid of some missions that they might have been pursuing and look at new missions. And as I mentioned earlier, the big focus now is cybersecurity
Yes.
and intelligence type of missions.
And you're
that's where
actively involved in that also.
we are. We have we're standing up a brand new cyber battalion in our Army National Guard, and that is a combined regional effort with the New England states. Massachusetts will have the battalion headquarters, and then on the air side, down at the 102nd Intelligence Wing on Cape Cod, we've got a brand new cyber intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance group that we have stood up, and that's going to work real well because the folks on the 102nd Intelligence Wing, they're doing missions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week right now, supporting the warfighters in Africa and in Southwest Asia. So they're the guys that are looking on the screens when these special ops teams are calling back, and they're the men and women that are basically saying, that's a good target, go ahead and hit it. So.
You get me excited. I want to get my boots back on. You've got a lot of things going on. It's such a tremendous challenge to keep everything organized and keep leading. As you motivate your airmen and your soldiers and your civilians, how do you do that? Do you do that by speeches? You do that by emails?
Yeah, we've actually kind of broadened out a little bit. You know, I still make a lot of speeches. I've got a guy who is just a phenomenal speechwriter helping me. You know, I give him my ideas, and he just really puts the words to magic, I guess. He's just very skilled at that. But really, you know, it comes down to, a lot of it comes down to just one-on-one interaction, just visiting troops, either when they're on a deployed area or a training site, or just walking through the headquarters building and just kind of sitting at a desk, putting my feet up and just kind of talking to somebody.
Right, a relationship kind of leadership.
Exactly, and you hit the nail on the head, Len. Everything in life comes down to relationships. Personal relationships, professional relationships, spiritual relationships. Sure. Everything comes down to that. And, you know, people will do a lot more for the mission, basically following your guidance, when they feel they have a personal relationship with you. And it's really easy. I mean, in the Guard, it's very easy because we have, you know, what I call the second greatest generation. These millennials, they take a lot of heat for doing a lot of this and everything else.
Right,
but I'll tell you what, these young men and women they've answered the call, and they're continuing to answer the call, and they have been since 9/11. They give me a lot of hope. So we've branched out like everybody else because we have to into the social media. We do Facebook.
Twitter accounts.
Twitter. I'm starting to learn how to tweet a little bit.
Well, our president's doing it.
Yeah. I won't do it as much as he's doing it, But we're learning that. And then what's the new one? Snapchat, I guess, is the
Snapchat.
other one that my public affairs guys are trying to get me spun up on.
So you're on top of it.
Trying to be. It's funny, you get your chops busted an awful lot because people say, "Do you work?" Everywhere I just see you getting your picture taken on Facebook all the time. So.
Well, I know you've been a New Englander in your heart and physically for many, many years. So I got to ask you about sports. How are we going to do here with the Celtics and the Red Sox season?
So I think, first of all, the Celtics, they're just unbelievable.
They are.
I tell you, that Isaiah Thomas is unbelievable.
He doesn't play 5'9".
No, not at all. Matter of fact, I was watching ESPN this morning before I came out, and one of the ESPN commentators said, "I never thought I'd say this, but being short is an advantage to that man when he plays basketball." And they just overcome the loss of his sister. Just kind of
absolutely.
Focus on what he needs to do when he steps on that parquet floor. So I think the Celtics are going to get past the Wizards, and hopefully they'll make it past the next step. The Red Sox, early in the season, as you know, I'm finding it interesting, this whole Red Sox-Oriole little battle that's brewed. It used to be the Yankees, then it was Tampa Bay, and now it's Baltimore. So two young teams, a bunch of young kids on that team. But I think I'm positive the Red Sox will make the playoffs. I was sorry to see the Bruins kind of get bumped out early on this year, and I have no doubt that Tom Brady and the Patriots will claim yet another Lombardi trophy.
You probably get some good seats every now and then.
You know something? No, I haven't.
No special.
I watched the Super Bowl. I was in Garmisch at a conference, and I set my alarm and got up and watched that Super Bowl. And I was so mad, Len. I turned it off the third quarter.
Oh, you did?
Well,
you weren't alone.
No, and I woke up, like I said, I was in Germany, so I was like 6 hours ahead, and pleasantly surprised. I really wish I had kept watching it. So.
So, General, I wanted to ask about the future of the Guard. How do you keep it great? How do you get the right people in?
Yeah, so we, our recruiters are out there in the schools, in the colleges, in the services. Like you, I started out on active duty and got to the point where I wanted to come home a little bit. And the Guard gave me that opportunity. So our recruiters are out there. They're doing some really interesting things now. ROTC in schools are now allowed. The Army was ahead of it. The Air Force is now caught up. They're now allowing young men and women that are going through ROTC at any of the campuses to take a Guard commission.
How new is that?
That actually just started this year.
That's a great idea.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's really, what's really helpful is the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Chief of Staff of the Army, both General Goldfein on the Air Force and General Milley in the Army, have actually understood the fact that it's one Army. It's one Air Force. It doesn't say Army National Guard on your
Army Active,
exactly.
Army Reserve, yes.
So they're looking at the total force concept. So I just kind of tell anybody, to even include my own kids. My daughter Bridget she'll get commissioned next year, and she's going to the Army as a nurse in the Yankee division in the Guard. I just tell anybody who wants to listen to me, hey, I didn't go off to school thinking I was going to make a career out of the military. I went off to college, I went to Norwich because I knew I needed some discipline. and I figured I'd do my 4 years and I was going to do something else. And I just had so much fun. And what made it fun was the people I worked with, just the caliber of the men and women that I worked with that I never wanted to leave. And I just tell anybody, if you've ever given it a thought, and you're never too old, just look into it. There are so many benefits, both while you're in and once you get out, that are available to you when you raise that right hand, you take an oath, and you join any of our armed forces.
When I was 18, I wanted to go to college.
Right.
I wanted to go to college, and the ROTC was a way to do that, and it paid for college. And so a lot of people have said, well, thank you for your service over the years and what have you, and your time in the military. But initially, I just wanted to go to college.
Right.
And so the military paid for college, and then I started to do things and fly helicopters and jump out of airplanes and go to Korea and go to Germany. And so then it became all these opportunities that were presented to me. And the education, they paid for my master's, they paid for my doctorate. And gosh, where else can you do that? And then if you don't like your boss, 12 months, just wait. You'll get a new one,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep, exactly.
So-
No, you're exactly right, Len. The opportunities that are out there when you put on a uniform are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent 3 weeks in Africa, in
Yeah.
Kenya, which is one of our state partners. And there, it's interesting. A lot of it was operational. I've got folks over there training now in a bunch of different areas. But the Kenyans have they've been protecting their country and their people from Al-Shabaab terrorist organizations. So we've been helping them with that. But I never in my life ever thought I'd be in Africa.
Sure.
I mean, it was just a beautiful country and a great experience.
When you signed up out of Norwich, you had no idea where that was going to take you.
None at all. And you're right. There are so many opportunities educationally, travel-wise, just as you grow as a human.
Right.
Can't go wrong. You're right. I mean, I've got guys who are E6s, sergeants. They've got doctorates because of the military.
Yeah.
And then when you get out, and if you don't even have to be a career guy. Let's say you do your first enlistment.
Right.
You get out. The benefits that are available to you because now you're a veteran. I think that's the one thing that our elected officials always come together on, regardless of what side of the aisle, is the support of their men and women in uniform.
Absolutely.
So, and that's
And I don't want to get political nor disagree with our president, other than to say that I've always thought our military is great. I don't know that we need to make our military great again because it is great,
right.
And it's going to continue to be great. And generals like you make that happen. I mean,
Thanks.
You're a great leader, and thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us about what it is to lead and take care of the men and women of the Massachusetts National Guard.
Well, I want to thank you, and certainly I want to thank the faculty and staff at Nichols College for allowing me to come here and spend some time and talk to you, and go Bisons.
It's been an honor. Thank you, General.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Len.
And for all you listeners of the podcast, come back next week when we talk about more lessons from experts in the field through the prism of the Manager Memo.
Keep your sunny side up, hide the side that gets blue. If you have 9 suns in a row, baseball teams make money, Keep your funny side up, let your laughter come through. Do stand upon your legs, be like 2 fried eggs. Keep your sunny side up.